So this was a pretty auspicious, pretty big week. I was inspired by a couple of events. Of course, Valentine's Day was this week, and it brought my awareness to the concept of the idea of relationship. And it's not specifically what most people think of on Valentine's Day, where they are thinking about either relationships that they are in with another human being, or relationships that they have been in with other human beings, or fantasize about relationships they'd like to be in with other human beings. It's more like relationship with a capital R. In other words, relationship to that constant stream of events and activities and experiences that we call life. So, for example, what's your relationship to the weather outside? What's your relationship to this moment? What's your relationship to that coat hanging up in your closet that you've been wearing for the past 23 years that your partner wishes you would get rid of? So that's what I'd like to talk about today, is relationship kind of with a capital R. But there was also another event this week. This week was the 20-year anniversary of the movie The Matrix. Certainly a copy of it resides in every Buddhist's video library at home. And in this movie, Morpheus instructs us to free your mind. So free our mind from what? He talks about fear and doubt. But I'd like to expand on that definition by saying free our mind from what? In our Buddhist practice, to free our mind is to free ourselves from the illusion of separateness. The illusion of separateness. So in the same way that you don't have a life, you are life. Think about Neo in the movie The Matrix. He's not in the Matrix. He is the Matrix. When he is injected into that virtual world, he becomes that virtual world. And it was his realization that he was not separate from the other characters. He was realizing that he was also pixelated. We're all pixels. Thich Nhat Hanh talks about this when he says, waking up is when the wave realizes it's water. So how cool for all these concepts, these different facets of the diamond, to start showing up and bring these all together. So I have a reading from Jiddu Krishnamurti that I'd like to share with you on this idea. Mankind cannot come to truth through any organization, through any creed, through any dogma, priest, or ritual, not through any philosophical knowledge or psychological technique. He has to find it through the mirror of relationship, through the understanding of the contents of his own mind, through observation and not through intellectual analysis or introspective dissection. Freedom is found in the choiceless awareness of our daily existence and activity. So to be caught up in thought is to be a slave to the past. All thought is born of experience and knowledge, inseparable from time and the past. Thought is ever limited, so we live, therefore, in constant conflict and struggle as we try to reconcile our experiences now with experiences of the past, with beliefs, ideas that we have formulated from those past experiences, and try to apply them now. Here's another way to say it. Neutral events are made subjective by interpreting them through the lens of our perception. I'll say that again. Neutral events are made subjective by interpreting them through the lens of perception. Perception is colored by experience, those things that have happened to us in the past. And then again, they are filtered through our state of mind at that moment, and again, altered. So at that point, it's difficult to ascertain what is really truth and what is really reality and what is really happening right now, because we're filtering it through our perception, which is filtered through past experiences, which is then filtered by our current state of mind. And so then we come up with this idea. That's kind of that old story of the soccer game. And there's all these people at the soccer game, but every one of them's having a different experience. The dad may be sitting out in the car waiting for things to get over because he's got things to do, places to go, people to see. Mom is in the stands yelling at the ref for a bad call. The student or the soccer player's down on the field just having a great time. There's somebody sitting at the concession stand who, is worried about whether or not they fed their dog this morning. So all these people at the soccer game, and everyone's having a different experience. Let me offer another example on this idea of finding truth through relationship. If we look for truth by marshaling our thoughts, ideas, checking in with everybody around us, then we're kind of looking externally for what is truth. What does this book say? What does this video say? What does this person say? And that's where you kind of get caught up in things at the soccer game. But as Krishnamurti says, truth is a pathless land, and it is found in relationship. So let me provide a real-life example about this idea of using the mirror of relationship in order to discover truth. One edge of my practice recently is around my relationship to listening. To listening. And so this form has a tendency to blurt out in certain circumstances where I'm listening, to offer ideas, to offer fixes, repairs, to solve things, or to inject some witticism or joke. And to stay true to the movie The Matrix, if I take the blue pill, I can remain in the illusion that I am funny, that I am really connecting with somebody by all this blurting out, that I am solving their problems, and I am therefore quite valuable. However, if I take the red pill, then I can begin to see that the blurting out is about my own insecurity, my own disconnectedness, my own feelings of unworthiness, as if just being present and listening to someone was not enough. This can be a hard pill to swallow. But it is truth. It is seeing the conditioning of this form. It is observing and watching the overlay, the projection of story, of commentary, of the truths that I have bought into. In the same way that once in the matrix, you buy all of that as reality. You buy all of that as truth. So, as I begin to observe the conditioning of the form, and I'm watching the behaviors and realizing and noticing my relationship to listening, I begin to see the nature of mind. And I'd like to share this with you. Again, Krishnamurti on this idea of when we begin to see the nature of mind. Man has built within himself images like a wall of security. Religious, political, personal, these manifest as symbols, ideas, and beliefs. The burden of these images dominates man's thinking, his relationships, his daily life. These images are the causes of our problems because they divide man from man. His perception of life is shaped by the concepts already established in his mind. The content of his consciousness is his entire existence. The individuality is simply the name, the form, and the superficial culture that he acquires from tradition and environment. The uniqueness of man does not lie in these superficial aspects, but in complete freedom from the content of his consciousness. Freedom is not a reaction. Freedom is not a choice. Freedom is without motive. Freedom is not at the end of the evolution of man, but lies in the first step of his existence. When we begin to observe the nature of mind, we begin to discover that lack of freedom. And therefore, freedom is found then in the choiceless awareness of daily existence and activity. Becoming aware. When the Dalai Lama was asked to boil Buddhism down to the fewest words possible, he sat and he thought about it for a moment, and his response was shaping motivation. When I take time to go in and observe and explore my relationship to each and every precious moment, I can begin to see my motivations for the things I say, the things I do, the behavior patterns, and I can wake up to the truth. We begin to cultivate the observer. And that's where choiceless awareness resides, and that's freedom, equanimity. Not being tossed on the constant praise, blame, fame, infamy, fortune, lack, one experience to the next. It begins to observe life with an open hand, and we experience the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows. So the invitation then is to examine your relationships in each and every moment. So, for example, consider, if you will, your relationship to, let's say, your phone. Notice the moment that it vibrates or rings. What happens? What goes on in here? What is your relationship to that? Is it a moment of dread? Is it a moment of excitement? What is the perception? Somebody loves me. They're calling me. No, I don't need an alarm system. I rent. What beliefs, what symbols, what ideas are all bubble up in a nanosecond when that phone rings? What is your relationship? And I invite you to examine this. What's your relationship to, say, your computer? Is it a tool? Or is it an escape? When we, as the movie says, take the red pill, we invite introspection. We invite and cultivate the observer to notice these things that go on. What is your relationship to the beggar, to the panhandler, to the person asking for money in that moment? Is it uncomfortable? Is it an imposition? Is it painful? And nothing more needs to be done. It's the awareness of what's going on in here instead of being caught in the automaticness. That's where when I blurt out, when someone is speaking and I'm listening and I blurt, it's not good, bad, right, or wrong. It's unconscious. It's automatic. So when I stop to go in and explore and examine my relationship to listening, I then can see that automaticness. I can see that unconsciousness and simply shine the light of awareness on it. And so now, as I approach a listening situation with any person, I'm more aware of what's going on. And my tendency to blurt out, I can put a little wedge of awareness in there. So before I just blurt something, I can see what's the motivation behind that. Is it because they're sharing something uncomfortable and I feel uncomfortable? Is it because I feel the need to be or look knowledgeable, valuable, spiritual? What's the motivation behind the blurting? What is your relationship to certain behaviors that come into your field of awareness? How do you feel about people who disregard facts? How do you feel about people who drive much slower than you do? How do you feel about people who drive much faster than you? And just notice that. Invite the observer. Become aware. And when you do that, you purify the fear, the doubt, the greed, the delusion, because you don't act from those places any longer. And when you become clear and free, you can then act from a place of compassion because you've been there. You can act from a place of clarity and love. Love is compassion and knowledge. Create love. What is your relationship to certain times of the day? You can feel this. In meditation, what is your relationship to, say, dinner time? Is it an opportunity to come together? Is it just more work? Is it lonely? What is your relationship to bedtime? So what we're looking for as we observe and watch this is simply the overlay of judgment, the overlay of story, the overlay of commentary, all thoughts and ideas and concepts that have come from past experiences that we're trying to apply now. No longer are we a slave to the past. No longer are we a slave to conditioning. We become free. Life is not personal. How are you making it so? In each experience, how are you making this a personal experience? Why is it not just a neutral happening? Follow this, and we wake up to our true nature, our Buddha nature. Love, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. It doesn't mean we don't feel pain. It just means that we're free of suffering. To the question of your life, you are the only answer. To the problems of your life, you are the only solution.